The perfect routine. Emma Collins used to believe that trust was the strongest part of a marriage, until the small details started to whisper a different story. Every month, like clockwork, her husband Daniel Collins would pick up his keys, glance at his watch, and say the same words, "I'm going to visit my mother at the nursing home." It became a pattern, so consistent, so predictable, that Emma stopped questioning it at all. After all, what kind of wife doubts a man who claims he is caring for his own mother? Margaret Collins was supposed to be living in a quiet nursing home, just outside the city, a place Daniel described as peaceful and well-managed. Emma had never been there, but Daniel always assured her everything was fine. He would say things like, "She's comfortable, Emma, you don't need to worry," or "It's not a place you'd like anyway, it's better if I handle it alone." At first those words sounded caring, even protective, but over time, they began to feel like a wall, a soft, polite wall that kept her out of something she should have been part of. Every month, he claimed the same thing. Every month, he followed the same routine, and every month Emma watched him leave through the front door without thinking twice. But something about routines is that they can hide secrets better than chaos ever could. One evening, as Emma stood in the kitchen watching Daniel prepare to leave, she noticed something small, something almost invisible. He hesitated just for a second before saying the usual words, as if he had to remind himself of the script. "I'm going to visit my mother at the nursing home," he said again. But this time it didn't land the same way. Emma forced a smile. "Of course you are," she replied, trying to ignore the strange feeling forming in her chest. The door closed behind him and the house fell into silence. But it was not a peaceful silence, it was the kind that made you think too much. Emma walked slowly to the window and watched as Daniel got into his car and drove away, disappearing down the street. Like he always did. Every month the same story, every month the same destination, every month the same words, claimed so casually that they almost sounded rehearsed. Emma shook her head, trying to dismiss the thought. "Don't be ridiculous," she whispered to herself. "He's your husband, you trust him." But trust is a fragile thing, and sometimes all it takes is one unanswered question to crack it. Why had she never been to the nursing home? Why had Daniel never invited her? Why did he always go alone? The questions didn't come all at once. They crept in slowly, quietly, like shadows stretching across a room. Emma tried to distract herself by cleaning the kitchen, then sitting down, then picking up her phone. But nothing seemed to settle her mind. There was something about the way he said, claimed, something about the repetition every month that now felt less like care and more like a routine he didn't want interrupted. She sat on the couch staring at the door, half expecting him to walk back in and explain everything. But of course he didn't. Hours passed, and Emma found herself replaying every conversation they had ever had about his mother. The nursing home always sounded vague, the details always slightly different, not enough to raise alarm before, but now enough to make her pause. What if she had missed something? What if she had trusted too easily? And then a thought hit her so sharply it made her sit up straight. What if the story wasn't true at all? She immediately shook her head. "No, that's impossible," she muttered. "Daniel wouldn't lie about something like that." But the doubt had already taken root, and once doubt enters it doesn't leave easily. It grows, feeding on silence, feeding on patterns, feeding on the word claimed. Emma stood up and walked toward the door, her heart beating just a little faster than usual. She reached for the handle, then stopped. What was she even doing? Following him, checking on him? That wasn't who she was, or at least it wasn't who she thought she was. But something had changed. Something small but powerful, and it all started with a simple routine and a sentence repeated every month. "I'm going to visit my mother at the nursing home." If you're already feeling that something isn't right, and you want to know what happens next, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now, because the story is only getting started, and trust me, you don't want to miss the moment everything changes. Like this video if you've ever trusted someone completely, and comment below where you're watching from. I want to hear your thoughts, and tell me honestly, would you have questioned him? Or would you have believed him? Share this story with someone who loves a good mystery, because what's coming next will leave you shocked. Emma slowly let go of the door handle and stepped back, taking a deep breath. Maybe she was overthinking, maybe everything was exactly as Daniel claimed, or maybe, just maybe, the truth was waiting much closer than she ever imagined, and it wasn't at the nursing home at all. The cracks begin. Emma Collins tried to convince herself that everything was normal, that her husband Daniel Collins was exactly who he had always been, a caring man who visited his mother every month at the nursing home. but once a single doubt enters your mind it changes the way you see everything. The next morning Emma woke up earlier than usual and found herself watching Daniel more closely than she ever had before. The way he moved, the way he spoke, even the way he avoided certain topics, it all felt different now, not because he had changed, but because she had started noticing. He sat at the table scrolling through his phone, calm as ever, and when Emma casually asked, "How is your mother doing these days?" Daniel didn't look up immediately. He paused just for a second before answering, "She's fine, just the same as always." The answer sounded normal, but something about the delay, about the lack of detail, made Emma's chest tighten. Every month he claimed he was visiting her, yet his words carried no emotion, no story, no real connection. It was as if he was repeating a line he had said too many times. Emma forced a small smile. "That's good, maybe I should come with you next time," she said lightly, trying to keep her tone casual. Daniel finally looked at her, and for the first time, there was something in his eyes that she couldn't quite read. "No, Emma, it's not necessary," he replied quickly, almost too quickly. "It's not a nice place, Emma, you wouldn't be comfortable there." The words were similar to what he had said before, but this time, they felt sharper, like a door closing right in front of her. Emma nodded slowly, pretending to accept it. But inside the questions were getting louder. Why wouldn't he want her there? Why keep her away from something so important? Later that day Emma sat alone in the living room, replaying the conversation again and again. Every month he claimed the same thing. Every month he repeated the same routine. But now the details were starting to fall apart. She realized something else too. Daniel never mentioned names of nurses, never talked about specific events, never shared small moments that usually come with real visits. It was always general, always safe, always distant. That evening Daniel received a call and stepped outside to answer it. Emma wasn't trying to listen, but she couldn't help noticing the way his voice dropped, the way he spoke in short, careful sentences. "Yes, I understand, I'll handle it," he said quietly. Emma's heart began to race. Who was he talking to, and why did it sound nothing like a conversation about a nursing home? When he came back inside, he acted normal again, as if nothing had happened, but Emma could feel it now. The gap between what he claimed and what felt real was growing wider. By the time the next month arrived, Emma was no longer ignoring the feeling. As Daniel reached for his keys once again and said the familiar words, "I'm going to visit my mother at the nursing home," Emma watched him carefully. This time, she didn't just hear the words, she studied them. The way he said, claimed without hesitation, the way he avoided eye contact, the way he moved quickly toward the door, as if he didn't want to stay long enough for questions to follow. Emma stood up suddenly. "Wait," she said. Daniel turned back slightly surprised. "I'll come with you today," she added, trying to sound calm but firm. For a brief moment the room felt heavy. Daniel's expression changed just enough for Emma to notice. "No, Emma, I told you before, it's not a good idea," he replied, his tone tighter than usual. "Why not?" she asked, stepping closer. "If she's your mother, then she's family, and I should be there." The silence that followed was louder than any answer. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, clearly uncomfortable. "It's just complicated," he said finally. "I don't want you to see her like that." The excuse sounded emotional, but something about it still didn't sit right. Emma felt her frustration rising. "Every month you claim you're going there, but I've never seen it. I've never met anyone there. I don't even know the name of the place." Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly, and for the first time, there was a hint of defensiveness in his voice. "Why are you making this a problem, Emma? I'm doing the right thing here." The tension between them filled the room, thick and uncomfortable. Emma stepped back, her heart pounding. Maybe she had pushed too hard. Maybe she had uncovered something Daniel didn't want to face. Or maybe, just maybe, she was getting closer to a truth he had been hiding all along. "Fine," she said quietly. "Go." But as he walked out the door once again, Emma didn't feel the same sense of trust she once had. Instead she felt something else, something stronger and impossible to ignore: determination. As soon as his car disappeared down the street, Emma grabbed her phone. Her hands trembled slightly as she searched for nursing homes in the area, trying to match the vague descriptions Daniel had given her, but nothing felt right. None of it matched the story he had been telling. Her mind raced. If he wasn't going to the nursing home, then where was he going? The question echoed in her thoughts louder than ever, and this time, she wasn't going to ignore it. Emma stood up, her decision made. This was no longer just a feeling or a suspicion. It was something real, something that needed answers. Every month he claimed the same thing, but this time Emma was ready to find out the truth, no matter where it led. The truth doesn't add up. Emma Collins had reached a point where doubt was no longer Something she could ignore. It had become a quiet voice in her mind repeating the same question again and again. Every month, he claimed he was visiting his mother in the nursing home. But nothing about that story felt real anymore. As soon as Daniel Collins drove away that morning, Emma didn't sit down. She didn't hesitate. She grabbed her keys, her phone, and stepped out of the house, with one clear goal. She needed to see the truth for herself. The air outside felt colder than usual, or maybe it was just the tension building inside her chest. She got into her car and paused for a moment, staring at the empty street, trying to steady her thoughts. This wasn't who she used to be. She wasn't the kind of woman who followed her husband or questioned his words. But something had changed, and she couldn't go back to not knowing. Emma started the engine and drove toward the first nursing home she had found online, one that seemed to match Daniel's vague descriptions. Quiet area, small facility, not too far from the city. As she drove, her mind replayed every conversation, every detail. Every time he claimed he was there visiting his mother, the more she thought about it, the more the story felt like something carefully constructed, not something real. When she arrived at the nursing home, Emma sat in the car for a few seconds, gathering her courage before stepping out. The building looked exactly how she imagined, clean, calm, and ordinary. But there was something about standing there that made everything feel heavier. This was the place that was supposed to hold the truth. Emma walked inside and approached the reception desk, trying to keep her voice steady. "Good morning, I'm here to visit Margaret Collins," she said. The receptionist smiled politely and began typing on the computer. But after a few seconds her expression changed slightly. "I'm sorry, we don't have anyone by that name here." Emma felt her stomach drop. Maybe the name was under her son, Daniel Collins, she added quickly, hoping it was just a small mistake. The receptionist checked again, shaking her head gently. "No, I'm sorry, there's no record of either name." Emma forced a small nod, thanked her, and walked out of the building as calmly as she could. But the moment she reached her car, everything inside her shifted. If Margaret Collins wasn't there, then where had Daniel been going? Every month the question hit her harder than ever before, and this time it came with something else, fear. Emma didn't stop there. She drove to another nursing home, and then another, repeating the same question each time, asking for Margaret Collins or Daniel Collins, and each time the answer was the same: no record, no trace, nothing. The truth was no longer hiding in small details, it was standing right in front of her, clear and undeniable. He had lied. Emma sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel, her thoughts racing faster than she could control. Every month he claimed the same thing. Every month he left the house with the same words, and every month she believed him without question. But now that belief felt like a mistake she couldn't undo. Her heart pounded as a new question took over. If he wasn't visiting his mother, then where was he going? And more importantly, why? Emma leaned back in her seat, closing her eyes for a moment, trying to process everything she thought about confronting him right away, demanding answers, forcing the truth out into the open. But something inside her told her to wait. If he had been lying for this long, then there was more to the story. Something bigger, something he was trying to protect. Emma opened her eyes and reached for her phone, her hands steadier now, her fear slowly turning into focus. She wasn't going to accuse him without knowing everything. She wasn't going to let him twist the story or explain it away. She needed proof, real, undeniable proof that couldn't be ignored. She checked the time, calculating how long he had been gone, and realized something else. Daniel never stayed out too long on these visits, just enough time to make it believable, just enough to maintain the routine. It was planned, it had to be. Emma started the car again. But instead of going home, she drove slowly through the streets, her eyes scanning every passing car, every turn, every possibility. She didn't know exactly where he was, but she knew one thing for certain: it wasn't a nursing home. Minutes passed, then more, and just as she was about to give up, she saw something that made her breath catch. Daniel's car parked outside a building she had never seen before. It wasn't a medical facility, it wasn't quiet or isolated, it was something else entirely. Emma slowed down, her heart racing, as she pulled over at a distance, watching carefully. The building looked ordinary, but something about it felt wrong, like it held answers she wasn't ready for yet. She stared at the car, her mind trying to make sense of what she was seeing. Every month he claimed he was visiting his mother in the nursing home, but his car was here, parked in a place that had nothing to do with that story. The truth didn't just not add up anymore. It was breaking apart, completely. Emma gripped the steering wheel, her eyes fixed on the entrance of the building, waiting, watching, knowing that whatever she discovered next would change everything. She wasn't just chasing a suspicion anymore, she was standing at the edge of the truth, and once she stepped forward there would be no turning back. The shocking reveal: Emma Collins sat in her car across the street, her eyes locked on the building where Daniel Collins had gone, her heart beating so loudly it almost drowned out her thoughts. Every month, he claimed he was visiting his mother in the nursing home. But nothing about this place matched that story. It wasn't quiet, it wasn't medical, and it certainly didn't look like a place where someone like Margaret Collins would stay. Emma kept watching as minutes stretched into what felt like hours, her hands tight on the steering wheel, her mind racing with possibilities, none of them good. She thought about getting out of the car, walking straight inside, and confronting him. But something stopped her, not fear, but instinct telling her to wait, to observe, to understand, before she made a move. Then suddenly the door of the building opened. Emma leaned forward slightly, her breath catching as Daniel stepped out. He looked normal, calm, even as if he had just finished something routine, not something he had been hiding. Every month, he checked his phone quickly, then walked toward his car. Emma's pulse quickened. This was at the moment where everything could come crashing down. But instead of following him, or revealing herself, Emma did something unexpected. She stayed where she was and watched as he drove away, disappearing once again, leaving behind more questions than answers. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. Emma stared at the building again, trying to decide what to do next. Should she go inside? Should she ask questions? Should she finally face whatever truth was waiting for her? But before she could make a decision, her phone buzzed in her hand, making her jump slightly. She looked down, expecting it to be Daniel. But it wasn't. It was an unknown number. Emma hesitated for a second before answering. "Hello," she said, her voice cautious. There was a pause on the other end, then a soft, older voice spoke. "Emma, is that you?" Emma froze, her heart skipping a beat. "Yes." "Who is this?" she asked, already feeling something shift deep inside her. "It's Margaret, dear Margaret Collins, Daniel's mother." The world around Emma seemed to stop. Her grip on the phone tightened as confusion and shock rushed through her all at once. Margaret Collins, the same woman Daniel claimed was in a nursing home every month. Why was she calling her? And how did she even have her number? "I'm sorry," Emma said slowly, trying to keep her voice steady. "I thought you were in a nursing home." There was a silence on the line, followed by a small confused laugh. "A nursing home? No dear, I've never been in a nursing home." Emma felt the ground beneath her certainty disappear completely. "Every month," he claimed. "Every month." He repeated the same story, and now with just one sentence everything had been exposed. "I don't understand," Emma whispered almost to herself. "Where are you?" Margaret's voice sounded tired, but kind. "I'm nearby actually. I was hoping to see Daniel, but he hasn't been answering his phone, so I decided to come over. I should be there soon." The words hit Emma like a wave. "You're coming here?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, dear, I'm on my way," Margaret replied simply. The call ended, but Emma remained frozen in her seat, staring ahead, her mind struggling to process what had just happened. If Margaret Collins was not in a nursing home, and she was on her way to their house, then what had Daniel been doing every month? What had he been hiding? Emma didn't waste another second. She started the car and drove home faster than she ever had before, her thoughts spinning, her heart pounding with a mix of fear, anger, and anticipation. By the time she pulled into the driveway, her hands were trembling. She stepped out of the car just as another vehicle approached slowly and came to a stop in front of the house. The door opened and an older woman stepped out, looking around with a gentle but uncertain expression. Emma knew instantly it was her. Margaret Collins stood there in real life, not in a nursing home, not hidden away, but right at her door, just like the truth Daniel had tried to keep buried. Emma walked forward slowly, her eyes fixed on the woman who held the answer to everything. Margaret smiled warmly. "You must be Emma," she said, stepping closer. Emma nodded, still in shock. "Yes, I am," she replied, her voice unsteady. "I thought you were in a nursing home." Margaret frowned slightly, clearly confused. "Why would I be in a nursing home?" she asked. The question hung in the air, heavy and unavoidable. Emma felt her chest tighten as the reality settled in deeper than ever before. Every month, he claimed. Every month, he lied, and now the truth had quite literally appeared at her door. Emma looked at Margaret, then back at the house, knowing that Daniel would return soon, and when he did there would be no more hiding, no more excuses, no more carefully constructed stories. The moment she had been moving toward was finally here. The shocking reveal wasn't just a suspicion anymore, it was standing right in front of her, breathing real, undeniable, and as Emma opened the door to let Margaret inside, she knew one thing for certain: the next time Daniel Collins walked through that door, everything would change forever. The truth comes out. Emma Collins stood in the living room, with Margaret Collins seated quietly on the couch, her hands folded neatly in her lap, the silence between them heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that comes before everything changes. Every month Daniel Collins claimed he was visiting his mother in the nursing home, but now the truth was sitting right there in Emma's house, breathing real, undeniable, and impossible to ignore. Margaret looked around the room with soft eyes. "It's a lovely home, dear," she said gently. Emma forced a small smile. "Thank you," she replied, but her mind was somewhere else, focused on one thing: Daniel was coming back. When he did, there would be no more lies, no more excuses, no more pretending. Minutes felt like hours, until finally the sound of a car pulling into the driveway broke the silence. Emma's heart started pounding again. This was it. The front door opened and Daniel walked in casually, removing his jacket, but the moment he looked up and saw Margaret sitting there, everything about him changed. His face froze, his eyes widened, and for the first time since Emma had known him, he looked completely unprepared. "Mum," he said under his breath, his voice tight with shock. Margaret stood up slowly. "Daniel," she said with a mix of relief and confusion, "I've been trying to reach you. Where have you been?" The question hung in the air like a spotlight. Emma stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "Maybe you should tell us, Daniel," she said, her eyes locked on his. "Every month you claimed you were visiting your mother in the nursing home, but she's been right here all along." Daniel looked from Emma to Margaret and back again, his mind clearly racing, searching for something, anything to hold on to, but there was nothing left to hide. The truth had already appeared at the door, just like everything he had tried to keep hidden for months. "I can explain," he finally said, his voice low, strained. Emma shook her head slowly. "Then explain," she replied, "because right now nothing adds up." Daniel ran his hand through his hair, pacing slightly, as if trying to piece together a story that would still make sense. "But the truth doesn't work like that. Once it's exposed, it demands to be seen fully." "I wasn't at a nursing home," he admitted quietly. The words landed hard in the room. Margaret frowned deeply. "Then where were you, Daniel?" she asked, her voice filled with concern, not anger, and that made it even heavier. Daniel stopped pacing and looked at Emma directly. "I didn't want you to know," he said, and that right there was the moment everything shifted for Emma. "Not I couldn't tell you, not I was protecting you, but I didn't want you to know." "Why?" Emma asked, her voice steady but strong. "What were you hiding?" Daniel took a deep breath, as if finally accepting that there was no way out. "I've been going somewhere else every month," he said. "I've been paying off a debt." "A debt?" Emma repeated, her mind trying to catch up. "Yes," he continued, "a long time ago, before we got married, I made a mistake. I borrowed money from the wrong people, and it caught up with me. I didn't want to bring that into our life. I didn't want you to worry, so I handled it myself." "Every month?" Emma stared at him, the words sinking in slowly. "So instead of telling me the truth, you created a lie," she said. "You used your own mother as an excuse." Daniel looked down, ashamed. "I thought I was protecting you," he said quietly. Emma shook her head, her voice rising slightly. "No, you were protecting yourself. You broke trust, Daniel. Every month you claimed something that wasn't true. You made me believe a story that didn't exist." Margaret stepped forward, her expression soft but serious. "Daniel, you should have told the truth," she said. "There's nothing worse than losing trust in your own family." The room fell silent again, but this time it felt different, not heavy with confusion, but clear with truth. Emma took a deep breath, feeling something inside her settle. The questions were gone, the doubt was gone. All that remained was the reality of what had happened and what it meant. "I trusted you, Daniel," she said quietly, "and trust is not something you rebuild with more words. It takes time, it takes honesty, and right now I don't know if we have that." He nodded slowly, understanding the weight of her words. "I'll fix this," he said. "I'll make it right." Emma looked at him for a long moment, then stepped back slightly, creating space, not just physically, but emotionally. "That's something you're going to have to prove," she replied, "because from now on I don't believe claims, I believe actions." The truth had come out, not in the way Emma expected, but in a way that changed everything. The routine was broken, the lie was exposed, and the man she thought she knew was standing in front of her without his mask. And as she looked at both Daniel and Margaret, she realized something powerful. She was no longer the woman who accepted things without question. She was the woman who demanded truth. If this story opened your eyes and kept you hooked, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now, because stories like this only get deeper and more powerful. Like this video if you believe trust is everything in a relationship, and comment below where you are watching from. I want to hear your thoughts. Would you forgive Daniel, or would you walk away? And don't forget to share this story with someone who needs to hear it, because sometimes the truth doesn't stay hidden forever. Sometimes it shows up right at your door, just when you least expect it.